Hello, thanks for joining us for our special Remembrance Week review of Hyena Road, starring and directed by Paul Gross, who you and I have seen in another war movie, Passchendaele. Will it be as good? Will it be as bad? Who knows? We've both never seen it.
Looking forward to it. Hello, welcome to the Damian and Devlin Show, and today we're reviewing Hyena Road, the 2015 Canadian war film directed by Paul Gross and starring Paul Gross, Rossif Sutherland, Christine Horn, and Alan Hocko, to name a few. There's a lot of people in this movie. And this is, as I said, a Canadian film that was directed by Paul Gross, which we have actually done a movie directed by Paul Gross in the past, Passchendaele, and and hopefully you go back and check it if you haven't, but if you haven't, you don't need to see it. It's not like a sequel or anything. But once again, he tackles war, but this time a more contemporary war, where World War II, right? World War One, the first one.
Yeah, World War I with the first one. This one's set in the Afghanistan conflict. I believe it's modern day. It might be a little bit in the early days of the Afghanistan campaign, so in the 2000s there. I'm not quite too sure, but it is basically revolving around a team of snipers that have to assist a intelligence officer in a big political, convoluted sort of conspiracy that's going on within Afghanistan, all centered around the construction of Hyena Road, which is the name of the movie.
Yeah, Damian chose this movie for Remembrance Day. I know this is coming after, but we still chose a war movie because we enjoy watching war movies together, any kind. And I was very intrigued because I actually thought Damian had saw this movie, but he didn't. So we went into this both not having any idea except for the fact that we did share Passchendaele together. And I'll just give a little insight. I was a little harsh on Paul Gross. I'm a big fan of Paul Gross as an actor, and I have seen a couple of his movies because I believe he also directed a movie called Men with Brooms, which was not a war movie, unless you consider curling a war movie. But anyhow, for those of you who know, I was a little harsh on Paul Gross, and I hate being harsh on war movies due to the fact that, I respect them, and I think I did say I totally respected what he tried to do in Passchendaele, but if I recall, I wasn't the biggest fan of that movie. So all I will say, and then I'll let you go into your good things, is I do think Paul Gross has improved in a lot of ways from Passchendaele, in my eyes, as far as directing goes and even writing. Not perfect, but certainly I've seen some definite improvements on this movie compared to Passchendaele. How about you? I'm interested to see. You're more the war expert between us, so I'm interested to see what your take on this film was.
So actually, I genuinely enjoyed it, and I didn't genuinely enjoy it just because it's a good war movie. I enjoyed it because it's a good Canadian war movie, and that's not something that you see quite often in cinema. For one, I've seen quite a few Canadian movies. The last one I think we watched together was Porky's, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Nothing to do with war and Porky's, but most of the time, and I know fellow Canadians that they're watching, maybe even people from around the world that have seen some Canadian TV or cinema, it's not always that great. And I believe I agreed with most of your points with regards to Passchendaele on how it was shot and just the kind of Canadian feel. This one, I will agree with you. Paul Gross has learned. He's improved. He's almost mastered his craft as a director as well as a writer, because he gets the credit for both on this movie. And this felt more like a regular Americanized cinema movie, just focused around Canadians. So when I was watching the movie and I was seeing the uniforms, the weapons that they were using, it all struck home to me because I was recognizing cat badges. I remember the epaulets that they had on the front of their chest. They were using the old versions before they switched back over to the new current ones here in 2020. But I was recognizing the ranks and whatnot from my time in the service, and I really enjoyed being sucked into kind of a part of my own life. Even though I never did go to Afghanistan, don't get me wrong there, I still enjoyed the fact that this story was focused around Canadian soldiers fighting a Canadian conflict to help others in the world. So I really, really, really enjoyed that aspect of it.
Yeah, I will give you that. It was very nice to see a movie with like Canadian little flags and just talking about, they even mentioned Tim Hortons in it and stuff.
always got to mention Tim
And
Hortons.
I really enjoyed that aspect of it because, you know, sometimes they mention in a war film, you know, I'm from Canada, and you have like one token character. But it was nice. And that's one thing I did like about Passchendaele, is that it focused on a Canadian, you know, involvement. And I love that Paul Gross, and you can tell, I don't know if Paul Gross had any military things. I believe he did have a connection with his grandfather, which he said.
We talked about that in Passchendaele.
Yeah, you can tell he has such a respect for the war, and I think that's what helped get this movie made, because, you know, they were using a lot of, correct me if I'm wrong, this had to be like actual Canadian tanks
I was
and
thinking
weaponry
about
and
that.
stuff
The
like
budget
that.
on this film must have been huge, because they were using like state-of-the-art at the time military vehicles that are in use by Canadian forces, and it was really great to see the budget. I was afraid, again, because of that Canadian cinema trope, that it wouldn't have as big a budget as, say, an American film, which just is a generic war movie over there because they happen so often. But this one, it felt and looked like a very high budget war movie, and I really, really liked that.
Well, I don't know. I'm interested now to look at the budget. I'm going to do that after. But what I do want to say about that is I do know that in Canada you do get Canadian grants to make films. And I have a feeling, because this movie does have some moments that feels like it's not like an American flag waving movie, but it does have elements of having like a recruitment commercial.
Oh yeah.
And so I think that they got a lot of this stuff just based on, you know, maybe how Paul Gross handled certain other things in his past. Maybe. So even if it wasn't a big budget, I'm going to give pros to Paul Gross. I think his directing is getting a lot better.
Agreed.
I think there were actually some moments that were, I would actually go into breathtaking. Mm-hmm. I just think he got a lot of aspects right. There was still a couple of moments that I was like, okay, he took a chance and I'm going to respect him for that. But there was a lot of times where, if you recall with Passchendaele, I had a lot of problems with some of his choices, but beautiful shots. I would say that I'm very impressed. And as I said, I've always liked Paul Gross as an actor, so I like that I got a movie that I can actually say, yeah, he's really improving as a director. And I like that he does have this love for Canada, and you can tell he has a love for the people involved, that the soldiers and the equipment they use. He has a lot of respect for that. But I think, like, just seeing things like the locations and even the parts that were dealing with Afghanistan, there were some really beautiful aspects of it. There were times he showed the country, you know, how it's war-torn and dirty and stuff, but they also had moments of, you know, the beauty to it, like finding little essences, and that's what a really great director finds.
Yep.
The beauty in the, like, anybody can make something beautiful look beautiful, but somebody can find elements that in a situation that aren't beautiful, that aspect. So yeah, I'm giving Paul Gross a huge plus for directing in this.
Yeah, and I felt like all the actors in this movie as well did a fantastic job, going right from the support characters in the command post, giving the orders over the radio and whatnot. They all did excellent performances, even down to the more emotional, like having to deal with relationships. I felt that it was genuine. I felt that when bad news had to happen, it felt like bad news. It didn't just be like, oh yeah, okay, anyways, how was your day? It was genuinely upsetting to all the characters involved. And then, of course, you have your highs and lows with everybody's personal lives. But it still does fall into kind of the whole, like, yeah, there are generic soldiers in the background and you're supposed to kind of care for them, but they don't get enough screen time for you to care about them. I'm sure you or I will touch on that in a little bit. But for the main focus characters, there was Mitchell, there was the main guy, Ryan, and then, of course, I can't remember the woman's name. Captain something.
Yeah, I can't
Captain
remember.
something. But that's the one that Christine Horn plays.
Yes.
And she did a great job, too. I've never seen her before. She reminded me a lot of Lena Headey. a lot with her facial expressions, just the way that she looks and the way that she promotes herself. And Lena Headey is a great actress too. So I really enjoyed what we got with all the characters. What didn't you like about the characters? I could tell that there were some things I would look over in my eye and see you were like, I'm not sure I like that about that character, or things like that.
Well, first, I did like a lot of the actors, and I actually thought there were a lot of, like, even the background characters all look realistic in the war setting. Yes. And even in the command center, which I actually really liked and would have actually really been interested to focus on a little more, but I know that wouldn't sell tickets. But I liked that whole hive type thing that they had, or whatever they called it. It was kind of a very neat thing, and just as I was getting into it, they kind of put us right back into the field, and that's fine. But again, I liked that. I almost thought there were times they may have actually used real soldiers in the background, because
the one scene, I agree with you. The one scene I think they actually did was, there's a scene at the very end where a couple of soldiers are sent home posthumously, and they do this big ceremony for them. And I believe some of the soldiers in that shot might have been real stand-ins.
If you're asking me for problems with characters, I actually didn't mind the characters at all. I actually thought they all did a really good job. I think where I did have some problems with, it comes more down to Paul Gross as a writer.
Okay.
I think some of the stories were, see, I'm having troubles with it, because the movie improved in the second half. There wasn't very much character development. And then when character development did start coming in, it kind of felt a little shoehorned. But as the story went on, I was sort of feeling it a little bit more.
I disagree with you there. I think there was plenty of character development right from the beginning to the end.
Oh, no.
Here's what I will say about the script. I liked the story for the most part. However, I will agree. Kind of after the first act, second act, that hump that you get over right before it leads right into the end, it was kind of convoluted. I didn't quite understand what was going on at times. And I believe those are the things that you're talking about, where you're like, what is going on? You deal with an intelligence officer, which is played by Paul Gross. So he's got like this whole network of things that he's trying to keep track of, as intelligence soldiers tend to do. And for a just regular audience member, that can be a little bit confusing, because you do have snipers here with him helping him out, and they're like, well, why can't I take this shot? And he's like, well, you got to think of the big picture. We're never told the big picture. We're just told, you got to think about this. Don't do it. Stand down. Don't shoot that guy. And that can be a little confusing. Like, why are we not shooting this guy? Why are we going to this safe house to talk to these guys? And then they bring in these myths about the lion of the desert and whatnot. And it can be a little confusing. Eventually, there was some exposition which explained some of it, but I feel like that should have come before rather than after, because I was left there kind of scratching my head, be like, what was the point of this?
Yeah, and I think, again, in Passchendaele, maybe they didn't have the budget. And I hate to keep going back to Passchendaele, but when a director's done a war movie, it's kind of hard not to compare it. And I had a lot of problems with his direction of action. He does improve immensely in this, but there are still some moments. I think my biggest problem is he has an issue, and I'm going to say it because I don't say that I'm a connoisseur of war films, but I think I've seen enough of them to know that I know how I feel when I watch them. And I still think he has a hard time building suspense. When I've seen movies like Black Hawk Down, and there's another one that kind of just throws you into it, like a Hacksaw Ridge, the suspense, you're just on the edge of your seat. And I never had that moment because, one, there was no building of a lot of the stuff. A lot of it was just kind of like, let's get right to it because we have so much more of the movie to do. And there were a lot of times that I was like, God, if that was done, like just taking a little bit more time, that would have been a really great suspenseful film. But I never felt, I don't know, maybe that's just me, and I'm sure you'll disagree on me. Because
I think it is just
I don't feel, I've seen some incredible war movies, and it in the tension building department, and I just felt it felt flat for me.
See, for me, it didn't. The movie starts off with an awesome gun battle, and right away, for the first 20 minutes or so, or however long it lasts, I felt this is awesome, and I have no idea what's going to happen. I felt my fingers curling into my chair with suspense and being like, oh my gosh, we're right in the thick of it. So I disagree with you there. It did have its lulls. But near the end there, the final battle that they do have, again, I was like, where is this going to happen? I'm on the edge of my seat here. This is wild and awesome. So I'm going to disagree with you there.
Well, that's what we do.
I think he's done an awesome job just getting himself better. Gone are the obvious, like where the actors pulled back on wires when they get shot. Now they react realistically when they get shot or blown up or whatever, and some of the CGI is really well done. I could tell a lot of the times that the weapons themselves weren't firing, and the reason is because you'd see the muzzle flash, you'd hear the sound, but the casing, the shell casing would never eject from the rifle. A few blood splatters here and there. Again, I could tell were CGI, so it kind of brought me out of it, but overall the action scenes themselves I felt were really well done.
I don't want to give any spoilers away, but there is a major thing that happens at the end. It's not really for me, a plot twist, because it was you kind of figured it was going to happen just because of the way Paul Gross writes, kind of when he deals with personal relationships, there's kind of like this Hallmark Christmas movie kind of feel to it. Not a little higher than that, but there was a thing at the end where I can't really talk about, but it's like we've had some sadness, and then suddenly they just kind of shoehorn this happy ending, which I thought didn't really feel right to me. And I can't really say...
See, I agree with you there too. Or I disagree, sorry. Yeah. I didn't feel it was shoehorned. I felt like every single lead in this movie finished. They all wrapped it back around, and every story, sub-story, main story, whatever, was all tied together and had a conclusion. So again, I kind of disagree with you there.
Yeah. No, my favorite bits of this movie is the relationship with Paul Gross and his informant.
Yeah, I like that too.
Even though there were times that they tried their hands at humor that fell flat, I still found it a charming relationship, and I would have liked to see more. It was nice that Paul Gross he doesn't really say he's the lead in this. I may have put him as the first actor, but Russ of Sutherland's Ryan is the main character in this. Yeah. I actually would have liked to see Paul Gross's story. I would have liked to see more of him. I thought he was amazing in the part. As I said, I liked all the actors, but his relationship with the informant, I wish I knew the actor's name. I believe he's an actor I've seen before on a soap opera in Britain. Could be wrong, but I kept watching going, I think I've seen this guy. I think he was on EastEnders, but don't quote me. But it's an amazing little friendship, and I would have loved to see more of that. But overall, I did enjoy the film, which I don't think I gave Passchendaele a passing grade.
No, I don't think you did.
This one I will.
One last thing I want to talk about with regards to this film is the music. This is one part where it kind of did fall flat for me, is when I did notice the music, it didn't really stand out to me much, except for when they played that funky music, White Boy, even though you said it was a knockoff version.
I don't think it was the real version. I apologize if it was. If it was, it wasn't the original recording, and maybe they re-recorded it. But to me, it did not sound... But it was pretty close. It was pretty close.
I enjoyed that scene. That's probably my favorite scene. There's just a bunch of Canadian soldiers as well as Afghani soldiers. They're all standing there waiting together in the desert with nothing to do, and one of the soldiers is listening to a radio and play that funky music White Boy's playing, so they all kind of just start dancing to it. I really liked that scene. Besides that, the only other song that I really noticed was, I think it was a 1950s, maybe 60s rock and roll song while they were all...
Baby Don't Go or something like that?
And they were all getting ready to go on their next mission, which again, I liked that song, but besides that, I really didn't notice any music in the movie.
I actually did. They used a lot of music. It wasn't like a score. It seemed more like a more modern, rock thing. Okay. But there were moments that they also used like Afghan feeling music as well. I thought it was good, but not powerfully memorable. No. But I did realize when it was on, so I did take it. But to me, it wasn't like, God, I got to look up that score or something like that.
That's unfortunate, because sometimes music can play a huge major role in a movie such as like Baby Driver or even Star Wars. Like, how could you have Star Wars with not that iconic soundtrack to it, right? And it's just unfortunate that war movies with their soundtracks more often fall by the wayside, even though there is some pretty good stuff there to find, just not in Hyena Road. Overall, what are you giving this movie?
I'm going to give it a 3.5 because I actually thought it got better in the second and third half. Subplots that I did not like came around and won me over a little bit. But as I said, I still thought it was a little weak in the storytelling at parts and just knowing who these characters are.
Okay, and that's fair. I'm going a little bit higher than you. I'm giving it a 4 out of 5. And I agree with some of your parts. But like I said, to me, this compared to Passchendaele is night and day. Passchendaele is still good. I still liked that movie a lot. But this is just like a whole other director, even though it's the same guy. It has a whole different feel to it, a whole different tone, and I just genuinely felt like for the strengths, they were really strong. The weaknesses, they were mediocre, subpar, but overall, it is a very good Canadian war movie. So thank you so much for joining us on our special Remembrance Day review. We do this every single year. We always want to make sure that we pay tribute to those who have served and those who are currently serving. So from us, Devlin, Damian, thank you so much for your service. Thank you so much for your sacrifice. It truly means a lot to both of us. Have you seen Hyena Road? Have you served in the forces? Let us know down in the comments below. We'd love to hear your stories and your opinions. Make sure you share this with your friends as well so that they can get the word out and share their own experiences too, and subscribe so you never miss a beat. You never know what we'll get up to next week, so make sure you tune in and find out.